So Harbites, T Falcon Napier, welcome to the Oracle of the Self. This is the ongoing coaching and training for all of our explorers. Today, I believe, is hour 46 of this. Last time around, we finished our discussion on the nature of change, and the last section on the nature of change is all about ethics. So sure, we're all learning how to manage our own levels of productive tension and in turn manage the levels of productive tension that those around us happen to be experiencing. Well, at a certain point in time, you have to ask yourself, is there a set of responsibilities that come with these skills? And I always, wanted to make sure that people understood that if you really understand the science of tension management and you spend as much time learning all about it and thinking about how widespread it applies, and that you're going to get to a point where you can become very fluent in how was getting people to do things a little more easily than other people could get them to do things. But unfortunately, that now brings up a good versus evil sort of a scenario. These exact same techniques that I'm teaching you how to protect yourself, you could use as an offensive weapon as well. So anything that we're talking about when it comes to upgrade and downgrade maneuvers and all these things that you guys have been learning, we got to just talk about how we're going to go about using these things. And I thought that was particularly important because I was focusing on being a sales trainer. And I certainly didn't want to develop a reputation of being a sales trainer who's teaching you all new ways of manipulating people. And so the motto of MasterStream was, if the truth can't sell, then nothing should. Lots of things can and lots of things do, but nothing should. And so whether we are selling a product, a service, or just an idea, an opinion to someone else, we have to recognize that we are employing these techniques. And what should be governing our usage of these techniques is some sort of moral and ethical bright spot. So that's it. And so that's why I always like to talk about this. But honestly, corporate clients aren't willing to pay us to talk about ethics. So. Okay, so last time around, I pulled out these two terribly translated documents listing Noam Chomsky's 10 strategies for manipulation in advertising. And these are techniques that were used back in the 30s. I don't remember what his lifespan was, but I'm sure the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. This is kind of like the heyday of when media was expanding and messaging was getting more and more intense on the public. I don't know when when did a TV become commonplace? Or Tom, a good radio? Radio would be much earlier, but when we just say TV became commonplace in American households?
I would say early 60s.
Early 50s.
50s?
Yeah.
50s, 60s.
50s.
And when did color hit the scene?
That would be
mid 60s, early.
Okay, all right. So see, I'm thinking like that's when we were probably getting more and more exposure to television commercials, to media promotion, to all that sort of a thing. And so that's when Noam Chomsky's 10 strategies would have been coming more to their closure. I think, no. I'll just say they were going to change about how they were being applied and what they're being focused on, because that's going to get into this. All right, well, that's a very long setup just for me to say that after that call, I said, I'm just going to go and use my Chat GPT-4 and say, okay, give me the list. So this is me. Now, I'm going through this for two reasons. First of all, because I think that the output from Chat GPT is really, really good and exactly what I wanted to talk about. So it might as well serve as a nice enough outline. But the other thing is, I think you guys should really spend time talking to Chat GPT. I know that very often there's lots of activities. I'm speaking now specifically about life in Sun City West. There's plenty of social activities that we can go to and things that we can do and people that we can meet. But the thing that we aren't finding are people with whom we can have really intelligent conversations about things. Everything gets so emotionally charged so quickly. It's tough to just have a good intellectual discussion about things. Is it just me, or have you guys found the same channel?
No, no, it's not just.
Yeah, and it's it's a big deal. And I have found that Chat GPT is neutral. I mean, genuinely neutral. If you want to have a conversation where the other person has no opinion and no feelings on the matter whatsoever, that's what Chat GPT is. And so
Well, you're
it's
virtually speaking to yourself. You're having.
well, that's the thing. You really are. And, obviously it has access to a lot of stuff. So I just want you guys to see what happens when T goes down a rabbit hole with Chat GPT. And
I love Chat GPT. I love
I
it.
love it. I think it's
Really do, but you have to admit it can become very masturbatory.
well, yeah, I mean, you can get really pulled into it
Yeah.
and
And I don't like things that do that. I don't
yeah,
like.
no, I
things
get
that
it.
do
It becomes
that.
its own addiction. It becomes
Yeah, yeah. That's what
yeah.
I'm.
And again, remember back from, I don't know, what's it been, 3, 4 weeks ago now, we were talking about just how prevalent addictions are. And I know that substance addictions get far, far more attention, but there are far more process addictions than there will ever be substance addictions. So people get addicted to, and I mean, literally any behavior that is normal and desirable and practical and beneficial, taken to an extreme becomes an addiction. So
So
yeah.
do you think there's not a demand there for the kind of conversations that you're talking about, or are people
Well,
just conditioned like
yeah,
with their
No
political
demand.
No demand.
no,
No
no
demand.
demand,
really?
but I think
You
it's
want to
no,
talk about pickleball
right.
or,
Golf,
or bunco or
golf.
Yeah. So Brian, there really is a need. I think there is a place, but the problem is there's no way for us to find each other. I mean, this is a community of 35,000 people, I guess, if it was full. And so far there's me and Linda and Tom and Anja and maybe a couple of people from the card group, guys. Do you agree?
I
But
don't
I'm
know. You know,
so
I've tried and it only goes so far.
yeah, and so that it's just so I think that while there is a real need for it, you have to have certain qualifications, if you will. You got to be able to set aside whatever your personal ick is, so you can just have whatever conversations need to be had. And I'll go back to Chat GPT. One of the things that frustrates the hell out of me about Chat GPT is that I wanted to get angry. I wanted to have an opinion. I wanted to say I'm right and the rest of the world is wrong. But it
You
just
are.
doesn't do that. It has no programming to even enable such a thing. So if you want a neutral, couldn't give a rat's ass sort of a conversation, use people as a sounding board. Chat GPT is your friend. So,
Mm,
yeah,
interesting.
you'll
And
see as the conversation.
scary.
Yeah, it can be very scary, but you know what? Again, I'm someone who's very aware of my age and my family's life expectancy. So I don't care. In the long run, I don't have any kids. I'm not responsible for what happens in any way,
Is
shape, or
that
form.
wrong of us to feel that way?
See,
No, this planet, you
No.
guys, the thing that we have to just hold as a truth is that we as human beings are infesting this planet. This
mhm.
planet doesn't need us, and we're doing it no favors.
Exactly.
So come on, we're temporary. I don't care how much longer humanity is going to be able to pull off life on this planet, but it is not forever.
Mhm.
So this planet is going to
Right,
continually change, and sooner or later, it's not going to be suitable as a
right.
habitat for our
It'll
species.
take a couple million years, but yeah.
Whatever, I don't know. So
Yeah.
my point is, why should we worry so much about that, particularly those of us who don't have progeny? I'm not, I mean, yeah, I've got a nephew and a
Yeah.
niece, but
I
yeah,
that's
Brian,
why
in the same place.
that's what the when people talk about colonizing other planets and Mars, I'm like, you haven't gotten it right here. Uh,
Right,
so
right.
let's not
Exactly.
focus on messing up another planet.
Right. So I mean, everyone's responsible for whatever contributions they've made, but face it, the vast majority of human existence has occurred long, long before today. And there were a lot of mistakes that were made far, far, far before technology came along, and, you know, exploitation of technology and blah, 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 blah. So every every generation has had its impact. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's the way it
And
is.
so many more people too, you know, people.
Exactly. Right. That's why we've gone from living on the planet or existing on the planet to infesting the planet.
Mm.
And there's not too many other species that are physically large enough to undo us, except for insects and microbes.
I was gonna say, don't discount things that are smaller, because
I'm
they're
saying sooner
mightier
or
than we
later,
are.
we will be wiped out by something we cannot see.
Yes.
I cannot see. So, and plus, you know, the universe itself is a living thing. So asteroids are flying around and things are moving here and there. Something's going to bump into something sooner or later. You know,
True that.
stars explode. So, you know,
True
can't worry
that.
about it. Can't worry about it. So again, you know, and again, you know, there is a serious message in what we've just talked about in the past few minutes, but the real lesson we need to draw for this is that none of us know if tomorrow even exists for us. And so
Mhm.
we have to fill our days with the happiness that we hope to have someday, because the only day we have is today. And so I think that if I can help people to recognize when they're being manipulated, well, you know, help them develop an oracle of the self so they can shield themselves from all of the negativity and all of the manipulative messaging that we are being bombarded with every single day. Maybe, just maybe, we can help people have an extra 10 minutes of happiness a day, you know?
Right. That's
So
why I
that,
was asking that question about demand. Because it seems like people, they kind of get they're part of an experience that they didn't design for themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But it seems like they're just unconscious about it. Because, like, for me, I carry around a coin, memento mori, which is the Stoicism for life can end at any time.
Yeah.
Because, after losing my wife and daughter in that accident, that woke me up to the fact that, it took me like 5, 6 years to even get to some sense of normalcy. But it woke me up to the fact that life indeed isn't guaranteed. And again, it was tough and it still is, especially during the holidays.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, but, this idea of enjoying each moment and enjoying each day, being deliberate and focused on that,
Yep.
there has to be a demand for it, because if we look at the exact opposite, where loneliness is an epidemic, mental health crises are off the charts. So that's saying that people are experiencing something they did not design. They don't know a way out of it.
I think though, Brian, they don't even recognize that there is a better way. I think people are
I
just
think
not,
so.
it's just so normal for them that
Right.
there is a big need for it, but there is no awareness yet. If we pull back to the awareness layer of the change grid,
Mhm.
people are very delusional in a great deal of life. Everything
You
just,
know, when you talk about control, I don't think that people are resistant to changing their exactly what we're talking about. They're resistant because they're fearful. They're lonely. They're all alone. They're lonely and they're desperate and they're sad.
yep.
But they fear movement for some reason. I don't think
Well,
it's
no, I can tell you what the reason is. I mean, some things are really truly physical threats, and so the fear is a real, physical threat. So yay for fear in that regard. But I think a lot of times that fear is one of the ways that people um, end up labeling the result from the process of evaluating something for control. So I
Mm,
guess I'll say this. So maybe someone says, you're going to have a lot more livelihood if you live in this state instead of this state, or this city instead of this city. Well, your brain kind of goes into that and says, maybe there is merit, maybe there is truth in the fact that if I lived in a different place, I might have different opportunities that could be better for me. But the one I have right here, right now, is serving me very well. And I've got this going for me and that going for me. So, and I don't see any point in jeopardizing what I've already got comfortable. And so I'm staying as I am. I hear that element of fear that Anja's referring to in that thought process.
And
So but we've often labeled fear as being an instinct that keeps us alive.
Mhm.
And so I think you're right, Anja. It's fear for sure, but I think fear is an expression of that control evaluation process that people go
You know,
And-
there's this fear to move, of movement. You have no option then but to repeat things.
Mhm.
And repeating things causes a psychological addiction to those things. And when you're presented nicely with opportunity for expansion or movement, you can't, because you've got your cigarettes, your heroin of repeating the same things.
That's right. That's right.
The same golf game, repeating the same pickleball game, et
That's right.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I also
Right.
think that people think, well, what if I move and it's worse rather than better?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, they're evaluating that whole control equation. What do I hope to gain, hope to lose, don't want to gain, and don't want to lose? I don't want to lose the comfort and convenience I already have. I don't want to lose all the friendships and that I've built in a particular place, but I would like to gain better weather, or I would like to gain blah, blah, blah. So I think too that the things I don't want to lose, I'll bet are where the fears would all end up would come out there. I don't want to lose my family, my security, my convenience, my whatever. It would be interesting. That's really a thought-provoking thing you just shared on, because I've never looked at each quarter and said this quarter of that matrix is really about where fears are revealed. So
Interesting.
when it comes to
Gotcha. I'm
things
gonna
I
put
don't
a
want to
poll
join,
in the chat there that Robert Wood Johnson Foundation studied life expectancy where you were born and reared in the U.S. and what's your life expectancy based on those zip codes. I don't know if
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand
oh yeah,
all the factors, so you can put your zip code in there and see
yep.
how your life expectancy shifts. I did that once from like my life expectancy was long is expected to be longer in the Washington D.C. area than in Florida, which I thought was
Hmm.
fascinating.
No,
Yeah.
but is it fascinating when you think of one of the big reasons why people move to Florida is because they're aging, and a lot of them are moving knowing or not yet knowing that they have a disease that's going to advance quickly. Do you know what I
Right,
mean? And
right.
so I think there's that element, just like I know that the life expectancy in a very industrialized city is
Hmm.
probably shorter because of industrial accidents and
Exactly.
those environmental sort of factors. So I'd love to see how they weighed the factors, or what factors they used and how they weighed them in determining that
Yeah.
zip code
So
match.
what do you see? I didn't quite get what you said. People move to Florida but why do they move there then?
I think that a lot more people move to Florida because, how do I put this? A lot of people retire to Florida, just like a lot of people retire here. But a lot of people towards their end of their working life realize that they're old for their age, and they're not long for the world. They've already got all these aches and pains. They already have all these diagnoses. They've already had some cancer or more cancer. So they decide whatever life they have left to live, they're going to go and live it in one of the places like where the retirees would go. So I wouldn't be
That's
surprised.
sad.
It might
It
be sad,
is.
but at the same time, I want to say good for them. If they
Yeah,
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
their
but it's
life
a
is
sad
short.
thought.
What's that? No? What?
but you get trapped in, say, Michigan when you're old and not as physically
Mm.
capable, and you've got 6 months of
Of
weather that is
winter.
like
No,
being
you're right. You're
beaten
right. Yeah, you're
with a
right.
baseball bat.
Yeah.
It
Well, I'll
is
go
Yeah.
back to, I'd love to see the factors, Brian, if you take a moment and look up that study. I'd love to see the factors and how those factors are weighed, because I don't believe that a choice of zip code in and of itself is going to make you live longer. It's
No.
going to be that there are things about that zip code that promote health and correct disease, one or the
Right.
other, both.
And
Uh,
help to alleviate depression,
exactly.
mental health.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. They were looking at some epidemiological factors in terms of what they call social determinant of health, although I have a problem with that word determinant because it sounds like you can't change certain things. So I call them
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
drivers. And
Yeah.
so
Mm,
they look at
okay.
conditions on like where people live and work, the economic status, the access to education, employment, housing, quality of healthcare, food insecurities, and those kinds of things. So like in Florida, if you think about like what you just described, it was jokingly said that people move to Florida to die.
Ooh,
Like their lifestyle literally changes because it's kind of laid back. There's a challenge in education in the state of Florida. My home is like 26 miles from the villages, and they
Mhm.
created, their own like education charter school. Some of those seniors would get training from like the local community college, but their mindsets is just really, it's like it's hard to deal with because they don't want to do anything. And then you
well,
hear
that's,
the stories from them like, yeah, when my husband retired, he's not doing anything, and now I'm lonely because he died. And so it's this idea of staying stagnant.
you know, Brian, what's weird? It's not true for dancers.
Mm,
Almost all of the crowd that we had 300 people that we were literally would call our friends.
T knows this.
And we hung out for 30 years together. Most of them are retiring to Florida, and most of them tell me they're out dancing every night.
Right.
3 times a week, but for the most part, a lot of them every night. So the
yeah,
dancers are not getting stagnant in Florida.
Well, I
yeah,
think they do. You're right, but let's expand that to say, I'll bet you the people who are pickleball fanatics are probably doing okay because they do describe our communities as active adults. And
mm,
Mhm.
I'm afraid that word active might describe 10% of our population here. What do you guys think?
I
You
didn't
know
even think of
something?
that.
On
Yeah.
T
You
on
know?
our street, I would say 65, 70% are active.
Yeah, at least.
Well, that's
really?
wonderful. But
Yeah.
then look at the quality of the homes. Look at how recently they would have bought there. Without saying unkind things about Sun City communities, we know Sun City communities get to be a little bit downtrodden.
Worn.
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
Well, the active part is definitely part of it because you can actually
Yes.
Google what's called sitting disease, and there's literally 34 chronic conditions associated with sitting for long periods of
I've
time. Like,
I've seen a
literally.
lot of that.
I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah,
you can point in life where your feet hurt every time you stand on them.
exactly.
Now, what the FUC do you do?
Exactly. It seems like you start to sit, like even after a half hour, your muscles stiffen, the blood pressure goes down, different things. And imagine doing that day after day after day. The musculoskeletal system, where your neck is moving forward, you create the hunchback thing. So there's a
And
lot of
putting
different
on weight.
conditions. Putting on the weight, exactly.
Well, and because so many of the activities that people here might be active in doing tend to be food centric, I
Hmm.
wonder if, other than the fact that they're having some social needs met, if they're not doing counter damage, or rather, they're doing other damage because of what our events are all about.
Right.
That was the worst part for us about being here.
Food centric stuff. And you guys have
We're
particularly
never food
vegetarian.
centric. Never.
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, it's crazy. And then, I mean, Brian, there are groups here that are one's called Zymergy. They're making their own beer and wine. And yes, they make good beer and wine, no mistake about that. But you go, I don't know that I'm going to consider that to be a healthy sort of.
Right.
I mean, fine, have a glass of red wine. Go right ahead. Have a beer. But yeah, just because they're active, you got to look at what is the activity.
Right.
Obviously,
Right.
talking about physical activities. So yeah, they're out there dancing or they're playing pickleball. But some of these people, maybe just culls the herd, Darwin. And in fact, but we see people during August playing pickleball in the afternoon when it's 112 degrees, 115 degrees.
Mm-mm.
I don't believe that's helping.
And you
No.
can hear the
No.
until like 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Pickleball, if you haven't heard it, Brian, makes a very distinctive sound.
Like
And
a click click noise.
it's more of a click because the
Oh,
ball, I think, is a solid, like wiffle ball kind of a thing, or the
Oh,
racket is a
okay.
solid paddle kind of a thing. But it makes a very distinct sound, and you can hear it. I mean, I'm nowhere near a pickleball court where my house is. The pickleball courts are probably midway, I guess, between me and Tom and Anja's.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, when the wind is going the right direction, we hear all of that pickleball
Wow.
sound. And
Wow.
I don't know that it would be a mile away, but it's probably the better part of a mile away.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they literally have their own, or they just use the tennis courts, or there's a pickleball court.
Oh, no, the
Mhm.
tennis courts have been remodeled and I think they add like a third more courts because pickleball courts are smaller.
Yeah.
Uh,
Some of they've
They
tried to
do not
convert
play
tennis
pickleball
to
on a tennis
pickleball.
court.
But I think our two biggest pickleball centers was built specifically for pickleball. The big
Yeah.
one's over by Tom and Anja. I think that one's got more pickleball courts than Johnson, that one over by Johnson does.
oh,
Yeah, I think
wow.
it's got 16 courts, I think.
Yeah.
And it's
But
smaller.
Brian, nobody should be using them in the afternoon when it's 112 degrees.
No,
Amen to that.
And these people
no,
do. So,
that's not wise at all.
crazy. Okay, we've now gone through 40 minutes and I haven't talked at all about my list. So here's what I'm going to do so that you guys can see this. I'm going to chat over to you. I just copy and pasted the entire Chat GPT conversation. So you guys should see that arriving on your, oh, chat, wait, nope.
Can you send it to me too, please?
Yeah, I'm sending it. I thought I chatted it over to everybody and lo and behold.
As an email?
Yeah, I can email it over to you guys too.
Because when you
Oh.
say chat it over, I never get anything.
Do you open up the chat window, the webinar
Yeah.
chat window?
It's in the chat right now. I
Yep.
see it there.
Excuse me, this is the technotard speaking.
Okay, so if you point up, do you have a control bar with all the chat GP or with all of the Zoom kind of features?
On my computer?
Yeah, Brian, what does yours say? What does the control area say? Where they find, where do they find chat?
Yeah, so it has you'll see your mic button for mute, and then chat is right next to it.
Oh,
Oh,
I thought that
see.
was just you guys talking to us.
Oh, no,
No,
click on that.
Yeah, so you click on that, and it should bring up your chat window.
Oh,
So when you end the call,
oh, I see that. There's a,
this screen disappears.
Uh-huh.
well,
Mhm.
how do we find,
How do we find it?
how do we
Well,
get
here's
that?
what, that's why we say when you want, so when I chat something over to you, if you point to the little icon, the word icon, just drag it to your desktop.
I don't have a desktop because you're filling the screen completely.
How rude of me. You can actually control the size of that. Brian, how do they control the size of what I'm showing them? But it doesn't matter. I'm going to email it
Yeah,
over to
you
you
click
guys.
on it. You click on the screen. It should either go big, or you can push your escape in the upper left-hand corner on your keyboard, and it'll make your screen go.
So it
Oh,
released the full screen, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Okay.
And so now can you see the chat window and my little Word
Yes.
document? Yeah, all right. And so inside of your chat window, do you have a document from me?
We see it in his chat window.
Yeah, all right. You should be able to drag that or
Sure.
save it.
Can you
And
drag
so
it?
dragging it is probably the easiest. However, I think if you point to it, there's 3 dots next to it. And from there, you can ask to open the file, show it in the Finder where it's putting it for you or something like
I
that.
got it.
Well, dang, thanks. We've never gotten anything you chatted over.
Oh, no, you just never open your chat window. So
Right,
now you know. how-
right.
All
We
right, so anyway,
look at each other and go, you're chatting.
yeah, so that's actually the a word version of what I'm showing you right now.
Technotard, technotard.
You learn
Yeah.
something new every day, your day's done. That's great.
Well, you know, and it's
Exactly.
easy for me, especially if it's technology.
Yeah, so let me show you how candid ChatGPT is going to be with you. So I said, I'd like a detailed overview of Noam Chomsky's 10 strategies for manipulation and advertising. Are you fluent in that material? And it greets me, yes, I'm familiar, often attributed to Noam Chomsky. However, the list is the work of Sylvain Timsit, who outlined these strategies in 2002. So is it interesting? We give credit to Noam Chomsky, who may very well have talked about this material long before 2002, but the list itself was compiled by Sylvain Timsit, and I have no idea who that is.
I don't know if I trust that
I
person.
know that I would, but ChatGPT doesn't mind calling you out. So there it is. So the strategy of distraction, creating problems and offering solutions rather than going through this one by one. I just want to give you the highlights of the whole document and then see where the conversation goes from that. So then Addressing the public as younger people, a way to talk down to the audience, making them submissive.
Interesting.
Use of emotional speech rather than reflection, manipulating emotions to override rational analysis and critical thinking. That's why I told you guys
that all
early
the
on, I
time.
said, when people get too emotionally charged as they're talking to me, I can't listen anymore because I'm
Mhm.
not hearing anything but their emotional noise. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, can't do it.
And the
Keeping the
visual
public,
doesn't help either.
what's that one? This one, keeping
If
the public.
somebody's in your face with all emotions, the visual distracts me from what they're saying. Like I usually, that takes me not being able to listen to them because I'm looking at their face and their anger and their
Yep,
angst.
yep. And you're picking, because again, we talked about everyone being empathic. That empath inside of you picks up on that energy. Probably Brian can give us how the mechanism of it, but your body is detecting their energy long before
Mm.
your awareness of any specific thing pops into your head.
Mm.
You've been picking up their energy for a long while.
Mhm.
And, you understand that energy, and it
Yeah.
pulls attention. The use of, rather, keeping the public in ignorance and mediocrity, promoting the
Mm.
public's inability to comprehend the technologies and methods used. So anytime someone telling you, you wouldn't understand this, but blah, blah, blah,
Oh, I hate that.
for their control and enslavement. I know this is more than you guys want to think about. You should just delegate this to the people that you've put in position, blah, blah, blah. That's what that's all about. Number 8, encouraging the public to be complacent with mediocrity, encouraging the public to believe that it is fashionable to be stupid, vulgar, and uneducated.
Mhm.
And interesting.
A woman once bragged to me, a 40-year-old woman, that she hadn't read a book since she graduated high school. Bragged in a tone, a braggadocio tone,
Like it was an accomplishment of some sort.
like
Yeah.
she's proud of herself.
Donna Boulder told me that but it was since college for her.
Yeah.
There you
She
go.
told me she happily closed the cover of that last book and has never read another book.
There you go. All right. So self-blaming, strengthening, making the individual believe that they are solely responsible for their misfortune due to the failure of their intelligence, abilities, or efforts.
Oh, that's
Mm.
true.
But that's okay, and it's
That's-
fashionable.
That's true.
Isn't that strange? You got to let these things all travel together or in combination sometimes to see just how dastardly this whole
Right.
scenario can get. Knowing individuals better than they know themselves. Over time, the system has gotten better at understanding the average individual than they understand themselves.
That's
And
what they're trying to do with all this technology, right?
true, it's
Mhm.
true, it's true. They're learning more and
Mhm.
more about us every moment. By the way, in the way I've got my chat GPT set up, I always ask it to rate its accuracy. And they said the accuracy for this is high. I asked them the source they used. This list is widely referenced in
Oh.
discussions about media and advertising manipulation, though it's important to note its misattribution to Chomsky.
Interesting.
I asked that for everything to give me that. Then I said, fascinating that this isn't based on anything Chomsky published. Could you expand each of those 10 strategies with a bit more detail and the implications of using such a strategy? When might the strategy be ethical versus unethical? How do each of these 10 strategies relate to the formation or triggering of cognitive biases, and which biases align with each strategy? And so
Brilliant.
it did not do all that. I like to give it a very detailed prompt just to see how much can it juggle at once. It's like this is too many asks in one single statement.
Yes,
It's
yes,
brilliant, though.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
But it lets you know. I mean, we're learning too how to best use Chat GPT. There are some people that can pull magic out of Chat GPT.
I was thinking it was too many questions.
Yeah, so we're
I mean, I
always
was.
seeing it. So here's an
Yeah.
expanded look, their implications, ethical considerations, and their relation to cognitive biases. All right.
So is
So
this in hierarchical?
no,
Right.
let's just say this is more detailed. You guys can look through the document to kind of have fun with some of these sorts of things. Just know when it can tell you which cognitive bias it's resonating to, something else happens. Then I said, to Tom's point, does the order in which these 10 strategies are covered mean anything? Is there a sequencing? And it says the order of the 10 strategies of manipulation is typically listed does not imply a particular sequencing or hierarchy of importance. They're presented more as a collection of different methods used in manipulation, each distinct in its approach and application. The list is more of a categorization rather than a sequence, with each strategy addressing a different aspect or technique of manipulation.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Because
so
it does seem like some of them may be, from a tension management perspective, like some may hit you straight away, I guess, and some might be quite subtle in a way.
yeah, and they may
That's what
very
it
well be, particularly the one here, if I go back, the gradual strategy. Implement
Yeah,
unpopular
exactly.
measures gradually over time. That's the boiled
Right.
frog syndrome thing playing out. And
Mhm,
creating problems and offering solutions is a form of distraction.
mhm.
Yeah,
That becomes like those things that we just tolerate, so there is no change
right.
until
Or
it's
if I'm trying to use proof that I successfully did things that didn't need to be done anyway, and don't talk about the struggles of doing other things, well, then maybe you'll think I'm going to do well.
mhm.
I mean, it's all manipulation. So I think it fits into anything and everything. In fact, I decided that I was going to put this out there just to see what
Hi,
chat.
Brenda.
Oh, there's
I'm
Linda.
good, honey.
Okay, Linda, are
Nope,
you
I'm just having some lunch, but that's not big.
muting Linda? All right. So, to what degree have these strategies been employed in the whole rigged election nightmare we've endured for the past few years? I bring this up because I just saw something else about Carrie Lake saying that the election was rigged. It's like it's been 3 years. So, so you just go like, does she genuinely believe that or is it being used? And so any of this discussion about that. And so I thought this was very interesting when I said the rigged election narrative, particularly prevalent in recent years, has indeed seen the employment of various manipulation strategies, similar to those outlined in the 10 strategies of manipulation list. While the specifics can vary depending on the context and parties involved, here is a general assessment of how these strategies might have been used. I want you guys to hear this paragraph, and I wanted to put this in here so you guys can see ChatGPT has no leanings that you're going to be able to get it to reveal one way or another.
Oh, please.
No, I'm telling you, I've tried to get it to take a position and it will
T,
not take
T,
yes.
T. There was fraud. There's never been an election held that didn't have fraud.
Well, that may very well be, but this is talking specifically about the narrative around a rigged election. I understand fraud has always been part of it. Mistakes have always been part of it.
Right.
That's always been part of it.
Human.
Yeah,
So
I'm only
I think that
interested.
this whole narrative is I think they are taking a stance because there are problems. There were
And that's all
millions.
fine. That's all fine. The question here is limited to, is that a form of manipulation? Is there manipulation going on? So it's true that there's always going to mistakes and cases and challenges and
Did they ever
issues.
say that in this? Does
What's that?
GPT ever address that in this? In this narrative that you're showing us now?
Not yet, but I hadn't asked that question. So after we finish going through this, let's ask it that question
Yes,
and
I'd
see
be
what it has to
very
say around it.
interested.
Yeah, just know that ChatGPT has a tendency to stay constrained to whatever it is that you've done. In fact, when you set up ChatGPT, you can set up certain preferences to how it's going to give you responses, and you can tell it
Right.
whether you want it to be brief or expanded. Um,
Mhm.
but the thing it cannot do is it cannot formulate an opinion. You tell it which of these is better, even based on the details, and it struggles to tell you which is a better choice.
I have one more
Right.
question for you and then I'll drop it. But what are they defining as the rigged election narrative?
would-
Because it's coming from a million different, is there one?
Exactly. And that's why you'll say when it says the rigged election narrative, it's attributing it to no individual. It's simply
Right.
saying while the specifics can vary depending on the context and the parties involved, here is a general assessment of how these strategies might have been used.
Yeah,
So
see,
you'll
that's
find,
towing the line right
yeah,
there. Because as soon
that-
as you name an individual, you're already confined it to party affiliation and those kinds of things.
yeah. So I didn't say, I could have said, by the way, as far as this party is concerned, give me an example. As far as that party is concerned, give me an example. I didn't do that. I just asked it to tell me to what degree have these strategies been employed in the whole rigged election nightmare we've endured for the past few years. Now, to your question, where does To your question about where does ChatGPT get it from, ChatGPT can only scan things that have either been provided to it or readily exist on the internet. And so it's going to go through the history of all the books that have been written about the election. It's going to look at all the interviews, all the whatever it's able to find that is available out on the internet, good, bad, right, or wrong. That's the only way it can get information that it's going to be reporting. And you'll see when we get down here, it starts to sometimes share with us where it got it from. But, again, we're just looking here about the strategies and how they might have been used. As we go through these things, you guys can certainly think about your specific experiences of the subject matter. I love it because this is something we do on some of the Circle of Brilliance calls where I say, are we ready to talk about what was the word I used, Brian? About topics that are, I think we just said controversial topics.
Right.
And it's really interesting when you go like, yeah, we want to look at techniques. We want to look at the tension management elements of that, what was going on, as opposed to this specific context and the parties involved. Where was the methodology and how effective is it? And should people understand those methodologies so that they can insulate themselves or protect themselves, or at least recognize when they're being used for manipulative purposes, right? Okay, and you guys will see I asked that as my next question when we get into that. So the strategy of distraction, focusing on an alleged election fraud can divert attention from other political, social, or economic issues. Creating problems and offering solutions. By claiming election rigging, some parties create a perceived problem, then propose solutions like stricter voting laws or audits, which align with political goals. The gradual strategy. Assertions of election rigging might be introduced gradually, initially as vague suspicions, growing into more specific claims over time. The strategy of deferring. Some claims might suggest future actions or legal challenges, keeping the narrative alive and in the public consciousness. Addressing the public as younger people. Simplifying complex electoral processes into good versus evil or fair versus rigged narratives can patronize the audience, reducing the scope of the discourse. Number 6, the use of emotional speech rather than reflection. Emotional appeals about a stolen election can override rational and factual discussions about electoral integrity. Number 7, keeping the public in ignorance and mediocrity. By spreading misinformation or half-truths about electoral processes, the public's understanding of these systems can be distorted. Encouraging the public to be complacent with mediocrity. This can be seen in discouraging critical engagement with the electoral process or factual information. Self-blaming, voters might be led to feel responsible for the alleged rigging by not being vigilant or proactive enough. And number 10, knowing individuals better than themselves, utilizing data analytics to target specific demographics with tailored messages about election rigging. It's important to note that the application of these strategies in real world scenarios, such as the rigged election narrative, can be complex and multifaceted. They can contribute to and reinforce cognitive biases like confirmation bias, seeking information that confirms pre-existing beliefs, and groupthink, desire for harmony within a group leading to irrational decision-making. The extent to which these strategies are used and their ethical implications can vary widely based on the context and the actors involved. All right, so I read all that just so I could say ChatGPT does seem able to provide a rather dispassionate narrative of possibilities. And from an educator perspective, I think it's important that every individual who finds the subject matter interesting recognize that these techniques can be applied to virtually any subject area of controversy. And you'll see the same stuff holding out. Now, and I'm interested in your guys' thoughts and feelings around this. I just wanted to go to the next one and say, do you think these are employed deliberately, or do people just fall into behaviors or strategies without any sinister calculations?
I was going to ask that question actually. Like, do those what are they called, the strategists that devise the strategies for the political parties? That I imagine.
Campaign
Like
managers.
Yeah, campaign managers.
Campaign
Probably.
I imagine they probably know some of this and kind of direct See,
Oh, I think they have master's degrees in it.
Yeah, I think
they
they have master's
deliberately
degrees
do
in it.
that. Absolutely.
Now, remember, you can get a degree in advertising, and that's where that was the root where all this came from. The messages we're talking about are a form of advertising. They're just
wow.
promoting a belief system or a thought or whatever, a position, whatever case may be. And again, whoever's right or wrong, that's for history to actually sort all out. I'm fascinated by the mechanism through which these kinds of messages can be put up, because I believe we can go to any period of history and see these techniques were all being employed. The only thing that was different was the messages and the messengers.
Did you ever see Wag the Tail?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They've known about this for a long time and they've been
Long time.
employing it 100%.
And it
Uh,
is a science, and that's why I said, okay, I don't necessarily believe that everyone. I'll be totally honest. I don't believe that everyone out there is smart enough to do this deliberately. I just don't think they possess that level of
people in
intelligence.
charge are.
But hopefully, or they're listening to someone who is an authority. I think for someone to really be the level of expert we're talking about in manipulation, you got to believe they're an analytical driver. They know their stuff forwards, backwards, and inside out. And that might make them not the spokesperson, not the mouthpiece, but definitely the strategist. They would know how to tell you, map it all out, do this on this day, use these words, position it that way. But they themselves may certainly not be standing in front of the audience and delivering that message. They're better off being a writer than they are being the deliverer of the message, probably because their personality is relatively downgraded in the realm of driver behaviors. Am I babbling, or did that make sense?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I go like, all right, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. I believe there are two groups that are worth looking at that are not necessarily the deliberate messengers or whatever. And I think those are the people who hear the message and then duplicate the message. So they continue to foster and support the information, although they're not doing it deliberately. They're kind of ignorant of the deliberation that was going on. But nevertheless, they're on board. They're on board with it because people will talk about things that are similar around them. And then the third group are the people.
With you, Brian.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Brian was it. That's right. They're also the group of people who live in total ignorance and end up being overwhelmed by it, saying and doing nothing. And so, point is, I think that there are people who are doing it totally incidentally, accidentally, and there's an army of people who are simply repeating what's been done deliberately. Now, if you look at each one of these, then these are the four that I said, whether these manipulation strategies are employed deliberately or if people fall into such behaviors without sinister intent can vary widely based on the context and the individuals involved. It's likely a mix of both deliberate and unconscious usage. And they talk about deliberate employment of it versus the unconscious or accidental use, the cultural or societal influence, complex motivations around it. So not necessarily one-dimensional, et cetera. So I thought this was an interesting little look to give it a specific situation and say, all right, well, if this is happening, then what should we be looking for? How do we know when we're listening to something that is a calculated manipulation strategy versus the truth? Just because something is part of a calculated manipulation strategy doesn't mean there isn't truth involved.
Well, you'd hope not. I
Well, all
mean,
right, but it's
that's
how that
car
truth is.
salesman is telling you the truth about the car, how
Right.
it works, what the power is. But he's selling certain things and he's making sure that you get it.
Yep, absolutely. And so this is what we're really talking about. There's truth inside of every message, but what is the degree of truth? What is the range of truth? If the truth is simply the first foray into the discussion, and then what follows it is more calculated, then we have an issue. And that's my whole point of the Oracle of Self-Training, is that you have to recognize when these things are calculated more than anything else. It is true that you could still be exposed to the same messages, but they're coming across unconsciously or accidentally. So we all know people who are out there with opinions, spreading them all out, and for certain they have no basis for this. They're just saying it, they might think it's true, but have they ever done any critical thinking? We don't know.
Well, no, and they're very resistant to it as well.
Of course, because then you're bringing into question their biases, confirmation bias, and people will fight you strongly if you even suggest that something that they believe and hold dear is
Well, it's
untrue. It's
not
amazing.
only that, there's a comfort level involved.
Yep,
I'm
that's
convinced that people are so comforted by these fallacies that they're so invested in that
That's
they
right.
will not let them go because they make them
They
feel,
can't.
yeah.
Right. I was saying which one of these, there was a bias they mentioned earlier. Um, well, it's in the reading, but it talks about one of the biases is that it goes against what you already believe in, and the other one is what you were just describing. Huh. Oh well. Anyway, there it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Ah, here it is. Confirmation bias versus groupthink. The desire for harmony within. And so if you introduce anything that goes against the groupthink or distorts harmony, you end up losing that part of yourself. You're not part of the group anymore. And so it's easier to just along with it. And Anja, I think when you and I went to that meeting, I thought we saw a great deal of groupthink.
Oh, absolutely. But it was a group I was more than happy to disassociate myself from.
Well,
Once
that's right. But we both went there with our suspicions, but open enough to see maybe there's some truth to
Oh,
what's
it
going
just got
on.
worse.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, there may be little elements of truth in whatever their full narrative contained.
Well,
But
of
we
course,
know,
there are things that should be looked into, but
yeah,
to call for a complete recall is ridiculous. And with
that's
no
right.
plan and no backup plan.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so, you're going to find the stuff playing out. So I went a little bit further after saying, is it deliberate? I'd say, well, I would think there'd be some legal issues around employing such strategies. And they just say there's some that, there's this false advertising, there is defamation and libel, there are election laws and consumer protection laws, so it's giving me the whole range. I could have said to you that people being manipulated in the world of advertising, there's got to be some laws that put some limit around that. And
Well,
it
yes,
goes,
you can't say this will make you younger, but you can say women report, they feel, they look
Feel
younger.
young.
yeah,
No,
the
they
appearance of
think-
youth, the
they think
appearance
they
of
see a
whatever.
difference.
Appearance of you.
But they always say they believe they see a difference in appearance.
That's right. That's right. Or you watch some of those drug commercials. It's all consumer protection laws
Right.
telling you, or maybe there's some regulatory stuff going on with pharmaceuticals. There you go.
Yeah.
Certain industries are highly regulated with specific communication guidelines. Financial services, I know for certain, because if you ran a little insurance office, and Tom, you would know this, at a certain size, you should have your own compliance officer, if not compliance team, because you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Oh, yeah.
yep.
One of the oddest things that would happen to sales agents would be customers, somebody would walk in and say, I just got a quote from State Farm down the street for $500 a year. I want you to beat it. Well, let's take a look at what items are, what you're actually insuring with your house. And don't give me that salesman gobbledygook. Can you
Yep.
beat this price or not? Okay, I can give you a much higher deduct. Don't give me that crap. Can
Yep,
you beat
yep.
it or not? Yep, yes, I
That's
can.
right.
I'll give you a $5,000 deductible and we'll take off jewelry coverage.
There you go. There you go. Now, again, I'm sharing this with you guys in the full conversation because I think if you really start putting these things together, a whole lot of stuff not only makes sense because it probably made sense before, but now you understand what the method is behind the madness. And while you might be aware of certain of these things, to be aware of the others, I think is a really interesting kind of a thing to do. So,
Right.
so then I said, well, I want to get into the real point of the oracle itself. So I said, how can the average person recognize that they're being manipulated? Obviously, the slower, more subtle manipulation strategies you've mentioned can work their way into a person's thoughts. So I'm thinking the focus of the question is about more immediate exposures. So ChatGPT says recognizing manipulation, especially in more immediate or overt scenarios, involves being vigilant and critically evaluating information and situations. Here are some tips for the average person to recognize potential manipulation. And I thought, this is a pretty good list. Thank you for putting it together. I would have had most of these, but not all of these, you know? And the one I hope that I'm doing is helping people become educated on manipulation tactics, you know, because you can't be aware of something that you're unaware of. Can you? How does that phrase work, you know?
Something can not feel right and you know it and you don't know why.
Yeah, there's a little sense that goes on there. And maybe that's what it is when you have, is that in here somewhere? Understanding your own biases, that would definitely be part of that. Yep. I mean, you guys can go through this. I thought you'd find it interesting. Then I wanted to show you, I said, well, what other specific, he gave me 12. What other specific manipulation techniques can you find that aren't mentioned in our chat so far? There must be more than 10, particularly considering social media and mass marketing. So it says, beyond the previously discussed 10 strategies, there are several other specific manipulation techniques, particularly relevant in the age of social media and mass marketing. And I looked at these and I go like, I know 2 or 3 of these. Who even knew? Astroturfing? Have you guys even heard of that one?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, I
It-
had.
When Elon Musk went into the accounts at Twitter when he was seeking to buy it and why he first backed out, he found hundreds of thousands of fake accounts that Twitter had created in order to make them look better.
Ah,
They're called bots. Fake accounts, fake users, fake things being posted. And Jack Dorsey was the CEO of Twitter. And there were a number of reasons why he resigned during all of that. But he said one of them was the realization that hundreds of thousands of fake accounts were in my company, and I didn't even know about it.
there you go. There you go.
Somebody's putting them there, and
Right.
nobody.
You're not aware of what you're not aware of.
Yes. So that was one of 2 reasons he resigned.
Yeah. So these other ones, I'll just rattle off the list of them. We can look at them more deeply next time around if you guys find this interesting. Although I do have a special exercise for January 1st. So we would do this pick up last time around. But let me just finish the document so you guys can look at it on your own. But I said, all right, give me some more. Echo chambers, gaslighting, bandwagon effect. I've heard some of this fear mongering for sure. Selective truths and half truths, overloading. Okay, framing. One day we can talk about the different reframes people can use because there's a lot inside of just that one. Guilt by association, discrediting an individual or group by associating them with a negatively viewed person or group. Oh my gosh, that's happening everywhere. Confirmation bias exploitation. Yep, if you know them, you can take advantage of them. Nostalgia marketing. Social
big one.
proof.
Mm.
Yeah, social proof. Oh, yeah. That's stuff that people can make up.
God, who listens to influencers? Idiots.
Right, but they
If
do.
they're- if they're
Scapegoating,
Mm.
and anchoring bias exploitation. And so I said, well, that's a nice list. How about 11 more? And perhaps let these new additions focus more on the religious, metaphysical, new age, etc. I think there's a very significant population of individuals living in those arenas, and they too are being manipulated by other people for other reasons than politics. So it says, absolutely, the realms of religion, metaphysics, new age, spiritual or philosophical areas are indeed subject to their own specific manipulation tactics. Here are 11 observed in these arenas. So miracle promises, exclusive knowledge claims, spiritual elitism. I'm wondering which of these we're guilty of in the Oracle of the Self, but everything we talk about is true. So, all right. Anyway, we are a little bit elite. No, I haven't read these, so I don't know what these mean. Spiritual elitism, the cult of personality. No, that is a cult. That's, yeah. Fear of outsiders, end times narratives, induced dependency, shunning and ostracism, transcendental baiting, overuse of mystical language, and sacred science. All right, well, somewhere we need to talk about truth as well. All right, but we certainly know a lot about those, right? Everyone, we've seen those. So I
Yeah,
said, well,
absolutely.
Well, please create a list of 10 or 12 early warning signs that you're being manipulated, suitable as a handout for a presentation on the subject. And here it put together early warning signs that you're being manipulated. So flattery, guilt tripping, isolation, gaslighting, pressure, moving goalposts, unbalanced reciprocity, playing the victim, inconsistent behavior, confidentiality breaches, selective memory, and passive aggressive communication. So I'm looking at these and going like, well, these are really very interesting, but I wonder what are people's ability to even recognize this stuff like? And so that was where I got in the discussion, but I thought this is interesting. I would love to see, I said, give me more about mass marketing. And then it came up with something we could apply to that. So targeted ads based on personal data, echo chambers, FOMO, fear reviews. So I think that, if we take a nice detailed look at these, we could know a lot about what's going on in our world. So
Have
yeah.
you seen the retro nostalgia commercials that are
Oh,
being shown now? There's one for Jimmy Dean sausages from the early 90s, and it's just right in the middle of all the regular brand new commercials on TV. Boom, the sound quality's bad, the pictures quality's bad,
yep.
but it's a full commercial. And there's a new one for, I can't remember what it is, but it's cartoon characters from the 1970s advertising something.
Wow. Yeah, but there you are. If you can get us to feel good about something, some time of life, we will transfer those feelings.
I wanted to buy the product the cartoon characters were advertising because a voice in me said, "Oh God, remember that commercial? Yeah, you were in your 20s then, Tom." Ooh.
Yep. Okay, this is the last piece I wanted to make sure this was in here too. It's like a lot of times we're not being manipulated by a person or by something we're encountering on social media. We're actually sitting in front of someone. So I wanted to know about when we're listening to a speech, a presentation, a public forum. So Ajay specifically had that meeting in mind. So I said, what should we listen for and observe? And look at the number one thing it came up with: emotional appeals over facts, oversimplification of complex issues, charismatic delivery over content. They didn't have that, but they didn't need that because they had already found an audience full of people who were upgrid.
Well, I think that Jolene is somewhat charismatic, but Dennis Hansel is absolutely not, and neither is Mancuso. But I
No,
think she has a small element of that, just the way she carries herself.
she does.
I really do.
Straw man arguments, bandwagon appeals, fear mongering, selective use of data. See, all this was happening up there.
Oh yeah.
False authority, slippery slope, yeah, loaded language, and personal attacks. Yeah, ad hominem without the person being there. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the last part I asked it. Yeah, because I thought, we do find ourselves exposed to all three of these lists of early warning signs, and there's no way that someone can begin to protect themselves against manipulation if they don't recognize it when it's coming to them. And so I thought, in the name of the oracle of the self, I think this is an important module, if you will, or subject. I don't know that it needs this amount of detail. It feels a little bit overwhelming, but not after you've had 45 hours of training.
Right, but I do think
but
people have innate bullshit detectors. I mean, they're not as comprehensive, of course, but I think that
this is getting into rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is rabbit hole because the depth of it. And I think about people being able to, people may be able to smell shit when they can, but can they smell their own? That's, I think we're talking about the oracle of the self. This is you talking to you about you. So it's great to be able to detect nonsense. Can you detect nonsense when it's happening in your own head? That's what I want a lot of the people to just be aware of. Yeah.
No
And
nonsense.
a lot of these things, I didn't even, I mean, you know them, like you're saying, Angie, you know them innately. But when I
I'm
see
not saying I know them. I'm saying that people don't have to necessarily be so aware
So trained. Yeah.
trained, yeah, better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
But I think people do have bullshit detectors that they push down mainly because they want to be part of a social crowd or
That's
they want to be accepted. There's
That's
some
right.
reason
That's
like that. But they do have the bullshit detectors, but they don't use them or they don't.
Yep,
they-
yep, or they deny them, you know, because
Right.
And well, and that's my point is that you have the bullshit, detectors. But when you go over this list, you go, oh, yeah, and that one too. You
Yep,
know,
yep,
it's
yep.
like, okay, gotta watch out for that. I don't know, it was sort of an awareness thing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
I,
and look, and then to Tom's point, I think there's way too much here, as a professional trainer, you always have to be thinking about how much information to give them, in what way, over what period of time, when's too much, when's not enough. We're always figuring out, I can promise you this is too much. This is more than a 1-day program if someone was going to try to talk their way through this.
right.
But for you guys at the level of training you have, or if you were one of the licensed professionals, do you think you should be aware of this stuff?
Well, I
yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
great, don't get me wrong. I think there's
Yeah.
great value in this list, but you said, how
Yep.
do people know how to guard themselves? And I don't think people are that
Aware, yeah.
that defenseless.
Right, I would agree. Over these early warning signs, wouldn't it be great for number one to be trust your bullshit detector? You know,
It would. It
I think
would.
that's the best
People
one,
don't
you know.
believe themselves. They don't
Yeah,
trust
smell it
them.
before you step in it. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll put that as number one. We can reorder these if we want
but
to.
don't add taste it before you eat it, because that
Yeah,
gets
please. Yeah, we
false.
won't do that. That's just a bit over the top.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's our call for today. So thank you guys so much for joining in.
Hey, can you chat that? Can you email that to me?
I sure will.
Thanks.
All righty. Okay, take care. Bye for now.
Bye,
Bye,
Linda.
everybody. Bye.